She left her earrings on the couch cushion again. Not a big deal on any other day, but this time, they were the ones I bought her for our anniversary, tiny gold hoops with a barely noticeable crack on the right one, the result of an airport drop 3 years ago. I only noticed because I sat down and felt the cold sting of metal against my thigh. Lauren never takes them off unless she's getting ready for bed, and even then, they usually go straight into the little dish on our nightstand. But this time they were next to the throw pillow, half buried under a sweatshirt that didn't belong to me. That's how it started, not with a phone buzzing or lipstick on a collar, but with those earrings and a gray sweatshirt 2 sizes too big. I picked up the hoodie. It smelled like cologne, something spicy and too sharp for my taste. It wasn't mine. It wasn't any brand I recognized. Lauren never wore men's clothes to lounge around the house, not since college. This one had a faint stain on the sleeve and a little hole by the cuff, something personal, lived in. Not something you borrow for fashion. I didn't say anything right away. I just folded it, placed it neatly on the coffee table, and went upstairs to take a shower. I let the hot water run longer than usual. I needed time to think, to sort out what this could mean without jumping to conclusions. But you can't unknow something once you feel it, once it claws at the edge of your gut and settles like lead. When I came back downstairs, she was in the kitchen, barefoot, hair tied up in a loose bun, humming along to the playlist she always puts on when she's cooking. I watched her stir the pasta sauce, laughing to herself at something playing on her phone. She looked peaceful, too peaceful, like someone who had just let go of a heavy burden and was finally breathing easy again. Whose sweatshirt is that? I asked casually, trying to sound as neutral as possible. She turned around slowly, the spoon in her hand pausing mid-air. Oh, that? It's from the costume room at the college. We were doing prop inventory last week, and I brought some stuff home to wash. Since when do you bring wardrobe home? I volunteered. The dryer at the theater broke again. They asked for help. She shrugged, but it was too casual, too rehearsed. Do you want salad or no salad tonight? I didn't answer. I just nodded and walked back to the living room. I sat down and stared at that sweatshirt like it held answers. It didn't. Just more questions. The kind that eats away at your sleep and makes you suspicious of every normal interaction. That's when I decided to start watching her, not stalking, not obsessing, but just paying attention in a way I hadn't in years. I noticed how her voice changed when certain names came up in conversation, how she started laughing harder at her texts but would angle the phone away from me when I walked by, how she'd mention people from work I'd never heard of before, and how her stories always seemed half-finished, like she was editing them in real time. 2 days later, I got my answer. Not from her. From the theater itself. I took the day off work and drove down to the university under the excuse of taking her lunch. I'd never done that before, which I thought might make it feel spontaneous and sweet instead of suspicious. I brought her favorite sandwich and a bottled green tea. When I got there, the front desk assistant told me she was in the back room, cataloging the costume sets. Perfect. I followed the hall, sandwich in hand, rehearsing some casual line about missing her face during the day. The door to the costume room was cracked open, and as I got closer, I heard voices, hers and someone else's. He's not suspicious. Trust me. He's the type that notices everything but says nothing. I froze. Well, he's not dumb, the other voice replied, a man's voice, slightly raspy. You're playing a risky game. I'm not playing anything. I'm surviving. Besides, he's too tired to care most of the time. Always buried in his work or spacing out. I don't know what came over me. I didn't kick the door open or barge in. I backed away, quietly, holding the lunch bag like a grenade I didn't know how to throw. I walked out of that building and sat in my car for over an hour, staring at the dashboard, the sandwich still warm on my lap. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, trying to absorb what I just heard. Those weren't the words of someone caught in a mistake. Those were the words of someone who made a decision. When she came home that night, I didn't mention anything. I left the sandwich on the kitchen table and told her I forgot I had a meeting. She smiled and kissed me on the cheek. No worries, babe. Thanks anyway. I wanted to scream at her. Ask her why she was doing this. Ask her who that guy was. But I didn't. I wasn't ready yet. I needed more. I needed something concrete. I needed a way to end this on my terms. So I did what anyone in my situation might do. I started learning everything about her schedule, her habits, the shows she was directing, and when she stayed late. I didn't go through her phone. I didn't install anything on her laptop. I did it old school. I took a week off work without telling her, pretended I had back-to-back meetings, and followed her routine from a distance. She wasn't subtle. 3 nights that week she left the theater around 9 and didn't come home until after 11. One night, she stopped at a second-floor apartment not far from the university. I parked across the street and watched her go in. She didn't knock. She had a key. I sat there for 2 hours. When she finally came out, she looked different, lighter, like someone who had just told the truth in a confessional and felt forgiven. That night, when she slipped into bed next to me, she whispered, "You're so quiet lately. Everything okay?" I stared at the ceiling and lied straight through my teeth. "Just tired." She curled up next to me and fell asleep in minutes. I didn't sleep at all. I knew now. And soon, she would too. It was Thursday when everything unraveled in front of me, not by accident, but because I pushed it. I had waited long enough, played my role long enough, collected enough of her behavior in my head to know I wasn't just being paranoid. I needed something that she couldn't explain away with a laugh or a quick hug. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for more late-night returns and fake explanations. I needed a crack in her version of the truth that I could open wide enough to step through. So I decided I'd stop waiting and force the moment to show itself. That evening, I told her I was going out for dinner with a friend from work. She asked who, and I gave her a name she wouldn't know. She nodded and didn't seem to care. That reaction alone was enough to confirm things. When someone genuinely cares, they ask questions, they want to know where you're going and with whom. But she just said, "Okay, have fun," and turned back to chopping vegetables like I just said I was going to take out the trash. I left the house at 6 but didn't go anywhere far. I parked 3 blocks down, turned off the engine, and waited. My hands were resting on the steering wheel, not gripping it hard, just holding it like I needed something to touch while my brain ran circles around itself. She left the house about 40 minutes later, dressed nicer than usual for a regular Thursday night. Tight jeans, that beige top she usually saves for going out, hair down and brushed carefully. She had earrings on. Not the ones I found on the couch a week ago, different ones I hadn't seen in a while. She wasn't rushing. She didn't look guilty. She looked focused, calm, like she knew exactly what she was doing. I followed at a safe distance. She drove to that same apartment building near the university, the one I'd seen her enter before. She parked out front and didn't even glance around. She got out, walked up the stairs, and unlocked the front door. Not knocked, not rang the bell. Unlocked it. That was all the confirmation I needed, but I wasn't leaving with just that. I wasn't going to confront her the same way others do with yelling and accusations. I had something better in mind. The next day, I requested access to the theater's back lot camera footage. I told the department assistant I was part of a project documenting campus security flaws for a local article. He bought it immediately and gave me a USB stick with everything I needed. That's when I saw it. Tuesday night. Her car pulling in. Her walking out with that same guy whose voice I recognized from behind the costume room door. His name was Eric. I had seen him once during a staff mixer, never gave him a second thought. They laughed as they walked together toward her car, arms bumping, comfortable with each other in a way that didn't match coworkers. He reached out and touched her back as they talked. It wasn't a brief touch either. It stayed there while she unlocked her door. She didn't flinch. She didn't stop him. When she returned home later that night, I was already pretending to be asleep. She moved quietly, almost like she knew she needed to. Maybe part of her enjoyed the secrecy. Maybe it made her feel something I couldn't anymore. I stayed still, my heart pounding so loud I was sure she could hear it. She didn't say anything, just slid into bed beside me like nothing had happened. The following afternoon, I walked into the university's costume room myself. The room was empty. I looked around at the racks of clothes, the boxes of props, the shelves filled with what people wore when they pretended to be someone else. It felt appropriate. I stood in the center of the room and looked at the small black couch against the wall, the one I recognized from the camera footage where she sat too close to him while flipping through scripts. I took a photo. Just one. I didn't need more. That evening, I cooked dinner. I made her favorite pasta and opened a bottle of wine. I wanted her relaxed. I wanted her talking. As we sat across from each other, I brought it up carefully. "So, how's Eric doing?" I asked, casually twirling pasta on my fork. She blinked, just once, and then smiled quickly, like she was trying to play catch-up. "Eric? Oh, he's fine. Why do you ask?" "I saw him at that staff event a while back. Seemed like a decent guy." "He is," she nodded, sipping her wine a little too fast. "Very professional. Helps out a lot with the theater work." I nodded, pretending to agree. "I hear you two spend a lot of time together." She tilted her head, now cautious. "It's work stuff, mostly. Late rehearsals. Script revisions. You know how it is. I didn't respond right away. Just looked at her, calmly, not giving her anything. That's when I saw the change. Her eyes didn't hold mine like they used to. She looked to the side, back at her plate, her glass, anywhere but me. She kept talking, something about how Eric was helping with costume management now, how he was young and eager, how the students liked him. But it was all noise. She wasn't explaining. She was filling space. I let her talk until the words started to sound like static. "Lauren," I said quietly, cutting her off, "you don't need to keep lying." Her fork clinked against the plate as her hand froze mid-air. She didn't speak. She didn't ask what I meant. She didn't pretend to be offended. She just stared at the table like the answer was sitting right there in front of her. I pushed my chair back and stood up. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to demand a confession. That part was over. I had my confirmation. I had what I came for. And she knew it. The silence between us after I said those words was thick, but I didn't break it. I stood there while she kept her eyes locked on the table, as if focusing hard enough on the pattern of the wood grain would change what had just happened. I waited, because I knew if she was going to say anything, it would have to come now. And I wanted to hear it. Not a lie. Not another half-formed excuse about long work hours or missing equipment. I wanted to hear the truth fall out of her mouth because she had no other choice left. She finally spoke, not lifting her head, just barely above a whisper. "What do you mean?" I laughed once, not out of humor, but because I couldn't believe she would still try to pretend. "You've been seeing him. After hours. In that apartment. You have a key. You walk in like you belong there. I've seen it more than once. I heard you two in the costume room. And I've got footage from the staff lot of you and him leaving together. So no more pretending." Her face slowly turned toward me, and she looked different now, like someone who had been caught in a game they thought they could keep playing forever. Her voice came out slow, deliberate, almost rehearsed. "You were following me?" I leaned forward, both hands on the table. "Don't try to spin this. You don't get to be outraged. I asked you direct questions. You lied. Over and over. I gave you chances to tell the truth." She looked down again, and I saw her shoulders rise and fall. She was trying to think of a way to explain it that wouldn't make her look worse, but at this point, nothing would help. I pulled the chair out and sat back down. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't pacing. I wasn't throwing anything. I just wanted the facts. I wanted to understand how long she had been building this mess right under my nose while I kept pretending we were still a team. After a long pause, she spoke again, this time more clearly. "It wasn't supposed to go anywhere. I didn't plan it. It just happened. We were working late, talking, laughing, and it got comfortable. And I was angry at you." I tilted my head. "Angry at me? You stopped paying attention to me, to us," she said, her voice gaining strength now, like she'd found a point she could hold on to. "You were always tired, always distracted. You buried yourself in work. You didn't even notice when I tried to make things better. You mean when you started staying out late and dressing differently? That was your way of making things better." "That's not fair," she snapped back, her tone shifting. "You're acting like this was all me. Like I just woke up one day and decided to destroy everything. I was alone in this house even when you were sitting right next to me. You stopped talking to me. You stopped seeing me." I shook my head. "You never once said anything was wrong. Not directly. Not clearly. You expected me to read your mind and then blamed me for not seeing the signs. That's not communication. That's setting someone up to fail so you can feel better about what you're doing." She stood up and walked around the kitchen like she needed to move or she would fall apart. I didn't expect it to last. It was just supposed to be a distraction. Something that made me feel alive again. "A distraction you gave a key to?" I asked, watching her pace. "A distraction you lied for, protected, and brought into your workplace like it was all normal." She stopped moving and stared at the floor. Her voice dropped again. "It wasn't supposed to last." "Well, it did," I replied, standing back up. "And now it's here. You didn't think I'd find out. You thought you could keep playing both sides. But now you don't get to hide behind confusion. You made a choice. And now I get to make mine." She sat down at the edge of the couch like her legs had lost strength. "I'm sorry. I'm not interested in sorry," I answered. "I want honesty. How long has it been?" She looked at me, probably realizing she couldn't avoid it anymore. "For months. Maybe a little longer." I exhaled slowly, pressing my fingers into the bridge of my nose. For months. That's how long she had been carrying this while smiling at me in the mornings and pretending like our life still meant something. I felt sick, but I didn't show it. I wouldn't give her that. "Do you love him?" I asked. She hesitated. That was the worst part. It wasn't an immediate no. It wasn't a look of shock that I would even ask such a thing. She paused, and then she said, "I don't know." "Then let me help you figure it out," I said. "You can go stay with him. Tonight. Take your things, go to his place, and if he really means anything to you, then you'll find out. But you're not staying here. Not after this." "You're kicking me out?" she asked, her eyes wide. "You walked out the moment you chose him," I replied. "This house isn't yours anymore." She didn't argue. She didn't cry. She stood up and walked to the stairs. I watched her go, each step slower than the one before. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I'd won anything. I felt like someone who had just watched a slow car crash and realized the driver had been smiling the whole time. The front door closed 30 minutes later. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't leave a note. Just silence. That was the first night I slept on the couch, not because we had fought, but because the bed upstairs didn't belong to us anymore. Not really. The next morning felt different, not just because she was gone, but because the house finally matched the silence I had been living in for months. There was no pretending anymore, no awkward smiles, no casual lies thrown over a cup of coffee. I didn't feel lighter, and I didn't feel better, but at least everything was exposed. That was something I could work with. I wasn't going to move on quietly. She had her secret life, and now I was going to make sure everyone she deceived knew exactly who they were dealing with. The first step wasn't emotional, it was practical. I gathered every piece of mail that came addressed to her and moved it into a separate box. I contacted the utility companies and asked them to remove her name from the accounts. Then I changed the Wi-Fi password, locked her out of the streaming services, and deactivated her access to the smart home app. I wasn't doing it to be petty. I was doing it because she didn't live there anymore. She lost those privileges the moment she walked out and didn't bother to look back. I didn't stop there. I sent an email to her department chair at the university. I didn't tell them about the affair yet. I simply informed them that Lauren had removed herself from the shared household and that, going forward, any professional mail or deliveries should be redirected to a different address, since she no longer resided here. It wasn't about the logistics. It was about planting the seed. I wanted them curious. I wanted questions floating around that she would eventually have to answer. Then I took a few days off work. I used that time to put together everything I documented. Photos, times, dates, locations. The staff parking lot footage. The audio I'd managed to clean up from the costume room using a free sound editor. I kept everything labeled, organized by date, and burned onto a USB drive. Once it was done, I sent 3 packages. One to her father, one to her sister, and one to her friend Hannah, the one who always acted like I was the lucky one for being with Lauren. Each envelope had a printed letter from me, not emotional, not angry, just factual. I told them that I was letting them know personally, so they wouldn't hear about it in pieces. I included just enough detail to show I wasn't speculating. I ended each letter by saying that I didn't expect them to take sides, but I also wouldn't accept being blamed for a decision I never made. I waited. I didn't have to wait long. Her sister called the same day the package arrived. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice was sharp and fast, like she'd read everything twice already and was still trying to process it. She kept repeating, "I don't know what she was thinking, and this is not the Lauren I know." I saved the voicemail and filed it away with everything else. Later that night, her father emailed me. He thanked me for being honest and said that if there was anything he could do, I should let him know. I didn't respond. I didn't need anything from him. I just wanted him to look at his daughter differently from now on. I wanted that truth sitting in their family like an unwanted dinner guest. Then came the part one had planned carefully, the one I knew would actually hit her. Eric's apartment was listed in the university's emergency contact directory, something I confirmed with a quick scan of one of her printed staff forms she had carelessly left in our filing cabinet. He was listed as a backup emergency contact. I printed out the same set of files I'd sent her family and delivered them directly to the department administrator with a note explaining that an inappropriate relationship had developed between 2 staff members, one of whom held a supervisory role over student activities. I didn't demand action. I didn't threaten legal steps. I just let the facts speak for themselves. 3 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I answered without thinking. "You're trying to destroy her," a man's voice said sharply. "Who is this?" I asked, although I already knew. "This is Eric. You didn't need to drag this into her career. That's not fair." I sat back in my chair, not surprised by the arrogance in his tone. "You're right. It's not fair. It wasn't fair when she lied to me. It wasn't fair when she brought her personal life into her professional world. And it definitely wasn't fair when she decided to keep both of us in the dark about each other. You could have handled this differently. No, I said plainly. I handled it exactly the way it deserved to be handled. He hung up. I wasn't done. The final step was more symbolic. She'd left a few boxes of her things in the bedroom: clothes, books, some makeup, and a couple of framed photos. I didn't throw them out. I dropped them off at the apartment building where she had been staying. I left them in the front lobby with a note that said, "These belong to someone who no longer lives here." I didn't sign it. I drove home with the windows down. Not because I felt free, not because I felt good. Just because I didn't want to sit in silence again. There was nothing peaceful about any of it. I didn't want peace. I wanted truth. And now she would have to live in the truth she created. That was enough for now. The first time I saw her after everything blew up wasn't planned. I was coming out of the grocery store on a Saturday afternoon with a bag full of frozen dinners and coffee when I spotted her by the sliding doors. She wasn't alone. Her sister was with her, standing slightly to the side, arms crossed, clearly not there for casual shopping. I could have walked the other way. I could have pretended not to notice, gone back inside, or even ignored them both. But I didn't. I walked straight toward them, stopped just a foot away, and waited to see who would speak first. Lauren looked thinner, tired, like sleep had become a rare thing. She tried to force a smile, but it didn't land properly. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly, her eyes flicking between me and her sister like she needed backup. "You already did most of the talking when you thought I wasn't listening," I replied. "But sure, go ahead." Her sister took a step back, clearly not interested in staying for the conversation, but close enough to interfere if either of us raised our voices. I appreciated that she didn't run away, but I didn't need her there. Lauren shifted her weight from one foot to the other. "I don't want to make this a public thing. Would you come sit with me for a few minutes? Please." I followed her to her car. We sat inside with the engine off and the windows down. She stared at the dashboard while I waited. I wasn't nervous. I wasn't angry. I was just watching someone who used to be part of my life try to stitch together a version of the truth that would let her sleep at night. "I don't know what to say," she began. "Everything's messed up, and I don't expect you to forgive me, but I thought maybe we could at least talk once without trying to hurt each other." "You never talked when it would have mattered," I said. "You only talk now because you have nothing left to hide behind." She nodded slowly. "You're right. I didn't handle anything the right way. I didn't think it would spiral like this." "You didn't think at all," I said. "You chose convenience over honesty. You waited until I found everything myself because you didn't have the guts to come clean." I was scared. "You should have been," I replied. "Not of me, but of what you were becoming. And now, here you are, trying to act like this is about a simple mistake." She turned toward me, her voice low but steady. "I'm not pretending it wasn't serious. I'm not asking for a second chance. I just wanted to explain why." "Go ahead," I said. "You've got 5 minutes." She exhaled. "Things got dull. I know that's a weak excuse, but it's what happened. We stopped connecting. You buried yourself in routines, and I felt like I didn't matter anymore. Then Eric showed up, and he made me feel seen again. It wasn't just physical. He talked to me like I was important, like my ideas mattered. And I let that matter more than what we had. So it wasn't about being unhappy," I said. "It was about being flattered." She didn't argue. "You know what the worst part is?" I continued. "It's not that you cheated. It's that you smiled through it. You woke up next to me, made breakfast, asked about my day, and acted like everything was fine. You didn't just lie. You rehearsed it." She winced at that, then looked down at her hands. "You're not wrong. I don't have any defense for it. I kept telling myself it wasn't serious, that it was temporary, that I still loved you, and this wouldn't change anything. But it did," I said. "You changed everything the second you brought him into your world and kept me out of it. And now you want to talk because everything you built with him collapsed the second it got hard." Her voice cracked slightly when she spoke again. "I haven't seen him since the department called us in. He's suspended. I might lose my job. Not my problem anymore," I said. "You made your choices. You knew the risk, and you decided to go for it anyway. You gambled our marriage because you wanted attention. Now that it's gone, you're hoping to salvage something from me. But I'm not here to patch your life together." "I know," she said. "I didn't come here expecting anything. I just didn't want it to end without a real goodbye. It ended the second you looked me in the eye and lied," I said. "That was your goodbye. This right now is just paperwork. I'm not proud of what I did." "Neither am I," I said. "I'm not proud that I didn't see it sooner." That I kept making excuses for your behavior. That I thought keeping quiet would save us. She wiped at her cheek, but I didn't move or say anything. I didn't care if she cried. That wasn't my responsibility anymore. I'm going to move out of town, she said. Start somewhere else. I've already started packing. Good, I said. That's one thing we agree on. I don't hate you, she said, her voice barely audible. I don't care, I replied. This isn't about hate. It's about being done. We sat there a moment longer. I could feel her wanting to stretch the moment, like staying in the car meant we were still something, but I wasn't going to give her that. I opened the door and stepped out. Take care of yourself, I said, not looking back. I walked away without checking if she stayed in the car or drove off. It didn't matter anymore. That was the last conversation we would ever have. After that final talk, things moved faster than I expected. She stopped contacting me completely, which was exactly what I wanted. No more drawn-out texts, no more explanations or fake attempts at closure. She packed her things the following week, didn't leave a mess, didn't try to force one more conversation. Her name disappeared from the mailbox, her car stopped showing up in the driveway, and her presence started to feel like a memory I had already begun to detach from. There wasn't a moment of celebration or relief. It just ended, and that was enough. The divorce process was surprisingly smooth. She didn't contest anything. She didn't ask for more than what she already took with her. No lawyers trying to stretch it out, no court appearances, just paperwork and signatures. She must have known she had no position to demand anything, and I wasn't in the mood to drag this out. We agreed on splitting the bank account evenly, and I kept the house. It was more about efficiency than fairness. We both just wanted out. Once it was official, I told a few close friends. I didn't go into the whole story, just enough so they understood why she was gone. Some were surprised, some weren't. Most of them admitted that something about us had felt off for a while, like they were waiting for something like this to happen but never said anything. That stung a little, not because they were wrong, but because it made me wonder how many other people had noticed the cracks I ignored. I started sleeping better after the second week. Not great, but better. I didn't wake up wondering what time she'd come home. I didn't have to listen to her footsteps upstairs while I laid on the couch pretending not to hear them. The silence in the house was no longer tense or uncertain. It was just quiet. I started cooking more, getting back into a routine that didn't feel like it was being watched or judged. I went back to the gym. Nothing extreme, just moving my body again, listening to music that wasn't tied to memories of her. I stopped scrolling through old photos. I removed her from social media. I didn't block her. I didn't care enough to, but I didn't want her name popping up randomly. She was part of my past, and that's where I intended to keep her. One night, I got a message from her sister. Nothing dramatic, just checking in. She said Lauren had moved to another city and was trying to start fresh. She said things had been rough for her. I told her I appreciated the update, but I didn't need any more. I had nothing left to say to Lauren, and hearing about her struggles didn't bring me satisfaction. It didn't make me feel like I'd gotten even. If anything, it just reminded me how quickly people can destroy something they spent years building when they stop caring about the person standing next to them. I'm not angry anymore. That part burned itself out. I'm not bitter, either. What I am now is clear. I know what I want and what I won't tolerate. I know that ignoring red flags doesn't make them go away. I know that love without respect is just a slow road to resentment. I gave everything I had to that marriage, and when it ended, I walked away with nothing but my own self-worth intact. And that turned out to be the only thing I really needed. Sometimes people ask if I'm dating again. I'm not. Not because I don't believe in relationships anymore, but because I like being alone for now. I like knowing that no one's lying to me under my own roof. I like waking up without the feeling that something's being kept from me. That peace is something I won't trade again, not for anyone. Looking back, I don't regret how I handled things. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I didn't let her turn it into a circus. I stayed calm. I made my moves, and I let the facts speak louder than any argument could. People who knew both of us now see her differently. Not because I told them to, but because the truth has a way of settling in when there's nothing left to distract from it. This whole thing taught me more than I expected. Not just about her, but about myself. I know now that silence isn't always peace, and kindness doesn't mean allowing someone to walk over you. I know I'm capable of starting over, even when it feels like the ground has shifted beneath you. And I know that loyalty is meaningless when it's one-sided. I'm not waiting for karma to catch up with her. That's not my concern. What happens to her now is her own doing, just like everything that led us here. My job was to get out, rebuild, and remember that I don't need someone else to complete me. I just need to be honest with myself and never compromise my peace again. That was the end of us, and the beginning of something better for me.